Hey guys. Hello. Thanks for joining us this Monday night, last Monday night, all the Monday nights that you were able to make it. Thank you, Ron, for hosting and moderating. And I hope you're enjoying. And the hotel is very focused on innovation, blockchain, and creating a community for people interested in growing themselves and growing their knowledge base. So welcome and please enjoy.
Thank you, Rivka. That was nice. Today, our guest is Andrew Levine. Andrew is the CEO of Koinos Group. Koinos Group is building a next-generation blockchain that's completely feeless. He's a veteran of the space. He's been around for a long time. He was the head of communications at Steam, which was or is a pretty large blockchain. Why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Hey, everybody. Like Ron said, I'm Andrew Levine. First, I'd like to thank you all for coming out and coming here and spending this evening talking about crypto. And I just invite you, I don't know anything about any of you, so sorry if any of what I say is stupid, but I invite you to also explore concepts like decentralization, blockchain, and smart contracts. If all that's gotten you in the door is crypto, that's great. I'm glad this area interests you. But I think what's really exciting about what we do is building decentralized organizations, using smart contracts to automate all kinds of human activities and build value in all kinds of ways. So my background is I was a lawyer. I graduated from law school into the 2008 financial crisis. And I'd already decided when I left that I didn't want to be an attorney, but I didn't know what the heck I wanted to do. So I went into real estate. I began starting up tech companies, eventually starting the first online, oh my God, it feels like an eternity ago now. I can barely remember what it was. It's called GiverHub. It was an online portal for donating that you could donate to any nonprofit in the U.S. instantly in one click. You could learn about the nonprofit and you could donate to it all in one place, and it had a social component. And I believe it was the first social network to leverage blockchain technology. It was a very long time ago. And it used a Litecoin clone as a kind of reward system. And after eventually, I went to work for a company called Steemit, which built a Reddit clone backed by a blockchain, the Steem blockchain, which at one time had a $2 billion market cap. It was a top 5 cryptocurrency. And if you've never heard of it, that just shows you the dynamism and insanity of this market, where people are excited about Solana now. It is entirely possible a year from now, nobody will know what Solana is. Or it'll still be great and huge, whatever. But things come and go and achieve insane valuations really quickly and just as quickly fade. But at Steemit, we built a real product that experienced exponential growth. It was a social network backed by a blockchain and hundreds of thousands of daily active users. People all over the world earning thousands of dollars in total. Many millions of dollars were in value were distributed to people all over the world for creating their content. And that's where me and my co-founders really learned a lot about building highly accessible blockchains through feeless operations, and scaling not just the blockchain, but all of the tooling and infrastructure necessary to support that growth. And then understanding the user component, how you scale the user growth, and all of the challenges around navigating both of these difficult hurdles. And we've taken all of that expertise and knowledge and channeled it into our new product and our new company.
Thank you for that. So let's talk a little bit about, I've been around for a while also, and it seems that now Web3 is a huge topic, the metaverse, NFTs. things are seeming to coalesce in the crypto space. Talk a little bit about your view of Web3 and where we are and where do you think this is going?
Yeah, so it's nice to see all of these fun concepts having their little day in the sun, and people getting really excited about them and bringing new groups of people, new demographics of people into the space. At the end of the day, from my perspective, they're all just different ways of talking about the same exact thing we've been talking about for 15 years, decentralized organizations. I don't even really like the term. So DAOs are also a thing. It's Web3, it's DAOs, it's NFTs. Personally, I don't know what autonomous really means in this context. But at the end of the day, we're trying to build enormous organizations of people that are creating value and allowing the members of those groups to accumulate wealth, but in a way that doesn't instantiate centralized parties, specifically private corporations that we have no interest in or control over. And that's really what I think always is appealing to people. Like, there's always people in power who are capturing a huge amount of the wealth, and peer-to-peer technologies have always had this potential of enabling us to deal directly with one another and exchange value between one another so that we don't need to go through these centralized parties. And I think what's most disappointing about the adoption of these new concepts and Web3 and DAOs and all that is that often, because they're not necessarily the same as decentralization, you can see people maintaining Web3 and highly centralized solutions like Solana in their brain because Web3 is somehow disconnected from the idea of decentralization. And so you have projects, again, like Solana, just to pick on one, there's plenty of others, where they just go, well, we have a blockchain. I mean, we're not decentralized, but you don't care about that, right? You just care about Web3 and NFTs, and we're great for that because we're so fast. It's like, yeah, Amazon's fast. So no, but I am happy that people are cohering on these terms that have been around for a while and that ultimately bring more people into the decentralized space. Actually did a panel recently on Web3 with Product Hunt, along with a great moderator named Laura Shin, who's got a book coming out soon called The Cryptopians, which sounds super exciting. It's all about the ICO craze. So I'm like behind the scenes of the ICO craze. Also, a couple of other great panelists. So for more on Web3, I would suggest looking on YouTube for that panel.
Thank you. You're building a blockchain company. You built a blockchain, brand new blockchain, a blockchain company. Why introduce a new blockchain now? Where do you see the market product fit for your blockchain? And looking into the very near future, where is the value in blockchains and cryptocurrencies?
Great question. Building a new blockchain is generally a really terrible idea. It's really, really hard. The reason why we ultimately came to this decision was because we had a unique set of individuals who were actually capable of doing it. All of my teammates were the core developers behind the Steam blockchain. So we had the talent, and we really believed, just as we believed when we were working on Steam, and you'll see this a lot in the blockchain space if you guys fall deeper down the rabbit hole, is that we tend to have people, at least the good projects, they're made up of people who genuinely believe in what they're doing. They're really excited and happy about what they're doing, and they choose the projects that they believe in. I might have issues with Solana, but I guarantee you that if you go and look at that team, they probably have a bunch of really great engineers who believe that speed is the most important problem to solve in terms of blockchain adoption. And if that team is constructed of people who genuinely believe that speed is the critical thing holding back mass adoption of blockchain, then I have to say that I respect that, even if I disagree with it. And so the reason why we worked on Steem is we believed that feelessness, that being able to build applications on blockchains without having to deal with forcing your users to pay fees all the time, was a critical barrier to blockchain adoption, or it was critical to and removing all the barriers to blockchain adoption, offering such a solution. And when we left Steem and found ourselves with a blank slate, knowing all of the problems that existed with that blockchain, and despite its incredibly high valuation and incredible usage, it had plateaued, it had suffered an attack, and it had really failed to live up to its potential, and it certainly failed to mainstream the world into blockchain. So we set about trying to figure out what needed to be done to, again, bring the world to blockchain. And if we could have built a platform that allowed developers to build feeless applications that didn't require a new blockchain, that's probably what we would have spent our time on. But when we looked at everything that was around, we realized that all of the existing blockchain architectures were obviously fundamentally fee-based. And when you start with fees at the base layer, those permeate every layer on top of it. And so you wind up having a system that is just inextricably tied into these fees, and it makes it really impossible to get them out of the equation. And so we had to start from scratch and build a new blockchain that was built from the ground up to be feeless. And what was interesting and exciting to find was that once we made that difficult decision to start from scratch and build around a feeless model, all of these opportunities came up, made themselves, appeared to us for innovating and developing an even better layer one on multiple dimensions. So infinitely upgradable, eliminating the need for hard forks, which was always a bane to our existence, and allowing developers to work in the programming languages that they already know and love. Seeing those two opportunities available in addition to the feelessness really showed us that we could build. It was at that moment in time, it had become possible to build a blockchain that truly had no barriers to entry for everyone. Developers, users, institutions, right? So once we saw that opportunity, we realized that we had to take a swing for it, and that's why we made that decision.
Very cool. Often when I talk to people, I know everyone here doesn't belong to that camp, but often when I talk to people and I say there's a feeless blockchain, immediately what pops to their mind is, oh, how are they making money? How are they going to make money? So can you touch on that, what the fees are there for and what they were invented for, and then removing the fees, what does that accomplish?
Yeah, it's funny. It's a great question. We get it all the time, and it's. I always want to be like, oh, you're so considerate of my needs. I really appreciate how all of a sudden, we like to assume that people are such selfish beings and driven purely by self-interest, and like, oh, you're so considerate. Don't you worry about me. Just use my free blockchain. But yeah, so. There's no Ethereum corporation that makes money and sustains operations through all those fees that people are paying. They are a spam mitigation tool. They are designed to prevent people from just flooding the blockchain with worthless transactions. And the real question should be, is this mechanism designed to serve its function as well as possible while providing as the lowest barriers to entry as possible? Because what you're trying to build here is a network that is growing as quickly as possible, because when you're dealing with systems like these, the value is proportionate to the size of the network. So yes, you have to introduce a spam mitigation, but if that spam mitigation is too expensive, then you're just decreasing the rate at which you can grow and the rate at which you can acquire higher value. And so the challenge is actually developing a decentralized spam mitigation mechanism that is designed to charge the user the lowest fee possible. That's what our system is designed to do. Now, it charges the user in opportunity cost, in time, by locking your tokens dynamically and preventing you from being able to trade them. And so you are paying a kind of fee, but it's a fee and an opportunity cost. And if you want to learn more about that, we released a white paper on our solution. It's called Mana, or sometimes called Mana. And it's super innovative. Technically, it's a solution to the halting problem, which is a computer science problem. And so you can read our white paper. It's very accessible. Like everything we do, at every level, everything we do is about accessibility. From our white papers to our website to the feeless mechanism to how we handle, actual smart contract development. Hopefully, you'll see when you look at our materials that accessibility, we are really all about accessibility. And if you ever hit a point where you're like, that's not accessible, tell us, complain, give us negative feedback. We love negative feedback.
Thank you. Moving forward, do you see, we keep hearing about Ethereum killers. I was early into Ethereum, and I loved Ethereum because I saw the possibilities. I was like, wow, now you can program on the blockchain. The possibilities are endless, and we did get DeFi, and we did get NFTs and DAOs. The future for blockchains, I don't see it as one blockchain to rule them all, right? There's going to be interoperability. How do you see your product fitting within the ecosystem?
Yeah, another great question. I think there's a profound irony to the idea of an Ethereum killer, because all these projects are positioning them. It's almost like tautological that if something bills itself as an Ethereum killer, it's more likely to get killed by Ethereum, right? You're going head up against the 900-pound gorilla. And so, and these tend to be projects that are fee-based. So they're like, yeah, we have fees, but they're lower. And we have a custom programming language that you have to learn in order to use it, but it's faster than Ethereum. And so, it's not 0 to 1. It's not a 10x improvement. They're trying to be a little bit better. And so they have to build themselves as an Ethereum killer because they're trying to be a better Ethereum. But ironically, you have all of these people competing with one another, competing with the 900-pound gorilla, and I think they're more likely to get trampled. I think Polygon is an interesting alternative approach where they're kind of doubling down on Ethereum, but that creates all kinds of problems with dividing up the ecosystem between the second layer and the first layer and unpleasant user experience. But I think the way we think of ourselves is as an alternative to Ethereum. And so the reason why we do so much so differently from Ethereum is not because we want to kill Ethereum or view ourselves as a competitor to Ethereum, but because we believe that it's important that people have options and people have very different options. And Ethereum gives them a very good fee-based solution with a custom smart contracting language that is designed for their specific use case, and we want to enable C++ developers, JavaScript developers, Python, Ruby, to come in, get right to work, and offer the kind of applications to end users that they're already using, right? There are plenty of opportunities to use apps that force you to pay fees in all kinds of new and exciting digital currencies. We want to give people the opportunity to use blockchain-based applications and not get nickel and dimed or, Benjamined all the time.
Thank you very much. So the next question I have is, as far as applications, so we saw Bitcoin come along, and that was the first application on the blockchain that utilized the blockchain for currency. There seems to be a lot of talk about currency and, Bitcoin replacing or some other cryptocurrency replacing somehow the dollar or replacing Visa or MasterCard. How do you see the currency world evolving? Is it true that sometime in the near future there's going to be a cryptocurrency that displaces the dollar?
Well, so this touches on something we talked about a few minutes ago, where it's great that so many new people are coming into the space and so quickly. But one of the things that I think we also see happening is the muddying of the waters around what this technology is designed to do and what is the philosophy behind it. What were the ideas that were held by the people who are building and promoting this technology? Specifically, I'm referring to decentralization, right? And so what we see is that a great many of the people who are coming in don't really care about decentralization. They care about not missing out, which is fine. They don't know what they want. And I think that it's important to provide some leadership here and help direct people to understanding the larger goals of what we're trying to do. I mean, I wish it were true that, people would, go whole hog on decentralization and be so eager to adopt a truly decentralized digital currency that one would be able to replace the fiat currencies that dominate the world. But I'm also a pragmatist, and I also believe that, and I think that this is actually something that differentiates us as a company, as a group, is that we are pragmatists and we take users as they are and we take people as they are, and we say, we understand that it may be too radical for you to make Bitcoin the reserve currency of the world, and there are probably a billion reasons why that's actually a bad idea. But Bitcoin or Ether or something else, or Tether, well, not Tether, but you know what I mean. I think what's more likely to be the case is something in between. Obviously, all currencies are going digital. I think the question will ultimately be, how decentralized are they, right? Like we say cryptocurrency, will it be a cryptocurrency? Well, what's your definition of a cryptocurrency? Is it a token that's on a blockchain that's not decentralized? Or is it a token that's on a blockchain that's thoroughly decentralized, or something in between? I think the position that we take is we'd like it to be on a blockchain. We believe that these things will decentralize over time, and our objective is to accelerate that transition as quickly as we can and help facilitate that transition and make people feel super comfortable with it. But to take kind of a neutral approach to whether it's going to happen next week or next year, I think there can be a paradoxical effect when you try to force a solution down people's throats that they're not ready for. You can see that going very awry. They don't adopt it. They get turned off to it. And I think we saw that in the early days, right? Let's say the first 10 years after the Bitcoin white paper, right? We were just too aggressive. We were too maximalist, right? And you still see maximalism in the space, and you see new people coming in the space, finding Bitcoin, and I'm trying not to use the word radicalize or fundamentalist. but they become maximalist in it because, it seems like such a great solution to them. And I think it was a hard-learned lesson for many of us to take a step back and say, yes, I love this, but what is the underlying technology here, right? Like the way you even phrase that question, that Bitcoin was the first application of a blockchain, right? There are a lot of people who don't believe in that articulation of what Bitcoin is. They would say blockchain is bullshit. Bitcoin is everything. It's a token design. It's an amazing currency, and blockchain is an implementation detail. And we are of the group of people who say, no, this blockchain is amazing, and people should have the freedom to create all kinds of currencies and all kinds of tokens and fungible tokens and non-fungible tokens and who knows what else they'll want to build. And we should be empowering them to build those things on a blockchain, and that's our perspective on it. Did I answer the question?
Thank you very much. My next question is, I feel the same way. I feel that blockchain is an opportunity. What other applications do you see being used by blockchain? I feel like blockchain definitely doesn't solve all problems. It's not a silver bullet for anything, but it does. I think it takes technology up a level. We're going to another level with blockchain. So tell us where you see blockchain being used in the future, where currently people are really not thinking about it. We have the applications that we love and are excited about, like NFTs and DAOs and the metaverse, but I think blockchain is eventually going to be everywhere. We're going to be using blockchain, but we're not going to know that we're using blockchain, right?
If it is to be adopted by the mainstream, it has to be implemented such that people don't realize that they're using it. That's how it works, which is weirdly something that most people in blockchain don't appreciate. They don't realize that you have to develop it like that, otherwise it's not going to get mainstream adopted. I think when you're talking about any disruptive communications technology, the first step is leveraging it to disrupt all of the existing applications that people already have in their lives, and basically delivering parity, right? So the internet had to solve the problem of the yellow pages before it could start exploring new and interesting use cases. And so while I would love nothing more than to think about highly experimental and esoteric use cases for blockchain, the first thing that, let's work back. The first thing that has to happen is that Uber needs to be powered by a blockchain, and Airbnb or an Airbnb competitor needs to be powered by a blockchain. Now, why would you do that? Well, what if you wanted to get rid of Airbnb, the corporation, and just have a decentralized network of people who are sharing their real estate and access to their real estate with one another, and using a digital token as a medium of exchange, so that all of the wealth that they're creating through this organization accrues to the members, right? So that's the objective, is replacing Airbnb, Uber, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram with a blockchain, with a blockchain-based solution. And so what do we need to make that happen? Well, we need a very efficient blockchain, one that can pipe into applications like these and operate at scale, and of course, one that doesn't have these massive barriers to entry, obviously fees. If you had to pay a fee when you searched Airbnb and when you sent a message and did anything on Airbnb, or like, why do you even have to pay a fee when you do an exchange with the person who owns the unit? Like, yeah, you have to pay them, but what if we could enable that economic transaction to happen where there's no additional fee, at least at the protocol level? Then the decentralized organization that comes in and offers the service, they get to cap, if they want to charge a fee or charge fees for additional services, whatever fee they do charge is pure profit for them. And now we have a way for decentralized organizations to compete with centralized organizations, because decentralized organizations are never going to win if they can't outperform their centralized competitors. And so it's really about putting decentralized organizations into a place where they can deliver products and services that compete with centralized solutions in their margins. Now, but I think at the end of the day, 10 years from now, 20 years from now, if all of the applications are powered by blockchain, the problems that those applications are solving won't be any different than the problems that we have today. Hopefully, they'll just be solving them better, faster, and again, in a way where more of the wealth accrues to everyone, the members of the organization. In particular, and maybe I could have started with this answer, is I'm particularly interested in the problem of homelessness. And I feel like there's an interesting opportunity for an application that incentivizes people to connect people who are without homes and without sustenance and the resources they need to the resources that they need. And you can think of it almost like a game. And actually, I think this is, if anybody else is trying to ideate on issues, on potential use cases for blockchain as entrepreneurs, I think thinking in terms of a game is highly beneficial. It's like, it's a backbone for a game. It's a turnkey game point system and reward system. And so anything you can kind of gamify can now be turned into this asset that can be speculated on and can grow in value and can be leveraged to solve real world problems. And so, yeah, a game where the players are competing to make fewer people homeless, I think would be an interesting use case. I don't know if that made sense.
It does make sense. Also, so from what you said, and I also agree that right now we're seeing, NFTs exploded over the last 6 to 8 months, and I feel like it's a great thing. It's going to continue. Touching on a point that you made is that now you're, as an artist, I can sell my work, I can put my work out there, and I don't have to be reliant on a gallery or a distribution channel. I could just, like, person to person, sell my art. And I think also an awesome component of NFTs is that the NFT could be programmed so when somebody takes my art and sells it to someone else, I also get a cut of that, which doesn't exist in the real world now. What do you see happening in the future that doesn't really exist in the real world right now, but could exist with these blockchain technology solutions? Is that too hard of a question?
It's a pretty hard question. Like, what's going to exist in the future that doesn't exist now? Our blockchain doesn't exist now, but it will exist in the future. Well, it's on testnet, but
component. Yeah. Yeah, I'm just trying to help you answer.
So one point that I'd like to make for anybody who isn't aware, I think many people aren't aware that an NFT is a kind of smart contract. A market maker like Uniswap is a kind of smart contract. And so when you hear about these interesting things on a blockchain, often, in my opinion, what the real takeaway should be, wow, these smart contract things, they are incredibly fucking powerful. And we keep finding these new ways of, these new primitives that are like especially useful implementations of smart contracts like NFTs. But at the end of the day, there will be more. There will be, you know, smart contracts are just basically code that is executed by a blockchain, and because they're on a blockchain, they have to be really small. And NFTs are just one smart contract. Okay, everybody knows that they're non-fungible tokens, right? They're just like fungible tokens, but they have additional they have fields for additional data. And so you can add data to these tokens, and by adding data, you make them no longer fungible. And so they're non-fungible, and now they have unique properties that can give them different prices. And so some of that information that people are using is stuff like art. Now what we're seeing is, I think something that a lot of people don't realize is that NFTs are pretty expensive to create and transfer, at least on Ethereum. Yes, people say, oh, there are other platforms where they're cheaper, but then we run into the same problem we talked about before with the whole Ethereum killer thing. Everybody is competing with Ethereum. That's where the capital is. That's where the users are. And and so I think what people don't realize is that the reason why art, other kinds of collectibles are the primary use case for NFTs is actually, in my opinion, directly related to the high cost of creation and transfer. When you have these fees that are incurred at multiple levels, the only thing you can do is something that has very high margins, like collectibles. Like a piece of art where you're going to charge, you're hoping to get hundreds of dollars, thousands of dollars in value. And, you know, if you, in any other context, if you went to somebody and said, hey, I've got this revolutionary technology, you're not going to believe how incredibly valuable it's going to be. And they say, oh my God, what's the use case? You go, people are going to trade art with it. They'd be like, you're a fucking idiot. What's the size of that market? It's not a large market. And so I think what I'm really looking forward to and excited to see is that ironically, as you drive down the cost of creating those NFTs, which we do see happening on other platforms, but once you see it dropped to zero and people can not only create the NFT for free and transfer the NFT for free, and now you can start exploring use cases where you're not trying to figure out how you can make $200 selling one NFT, but you're trying to figure out how you can make 20 cents selling 1,000, 10,000, 1 million NFTs, and the types of opportunities you can explore there. That's what I'm really excited to see. There's going to be an explosion in experimentation, and that's really how we discover value. Like people. It's always entertaining to speculate. Oh, this is the use case that's going to win, and I'm so smart, I can predict the future. And if I'm right, I'm gonna reference that video, and if I'm wrong, I'll never mention it. But either way, I look smart. And it's not. You don't look as smart when you say, you know, humans are really bad at predicting the future, but we're really great at throwing spaghetti at the wall and seeing what works. And you know, let's focus on enabling people and empowering people to throw as much spaghetti at the wall as possible, and then capture as much value, spend as little money experimenting as greatly as possible so that as much value is discovered as possible. The last point that I want to make is that I think that the most important lesson that I'd like to spread about NFTs, fungible tokens, non-fungible tokens, and market makers is that these are economic primitives, is that these are puzzle pieces that are becoming available to us to construct or compose decentralized organizations. Smart contract is the medium, right? It's the canvas, and we're experimenting with all these smart contracts, and then we're finding, ooh, fungible tokens, yeah, not just Bitcoin, all kinds of tokens. This is incredibly useful. We can use them as reward points. We can use them to securitize stuff over here. Oh, if we have a market maker contract, well, now we can have like decentralized liquidity for these assets. Well, what about collectibles? Okay, well, we've got NFTs over here, right? So the power of these things is that they become primitives, that we don't have to constantly reinvent the wheel every time we're trying to create some kind of use blockchain to solve some problem. And I think that's why DAOs are finally having their moment in the sun, decentralized autonomous organizations. It's as much because we have the mature tooling finally in place to actually build these things, but it's as much the conceptual framework that we've built over the last 15 years that includes things like non-fungible tokens, and market makers, where we're looking to solve a problem and we go boom, boom, boom. This is the fungible token. Here, fixed cap, inflationary, deflationary, right? We have this toolkit of concepts that we can compose the application with.
Thank you for that answer. All right, I think I ran out of questions. I wanted to touch on DAOs a little bit because they are becoming very hot, and Constitution DAO kind of like shot onto the mainstream media. I have some ideas on DAOs. I think DAOs are a great use case because I feel like anyone can conceptualize, oh, I can use a decentralized organization and get a bunch of people to work together in concert to do something specific. Right? So I see that kind of like the next level that we're going into. You could talk about that a little bit, and then tell us a little bit about what you want us to know about Koinos, and then we'll take some questions.
Yeah, I think I have a short answer to the DAO question, because I think there's like a deep irony to DAOs, which is like, the space has become so... I think DAOs, what people are calling DAOs now, are what we all assumed everything would just be a dApp. What is the point of doing anything on a blockchain if it's not this like fully decentralized thing? And then over time, things migrated in such a centralized direction where like all of the applications on Ethereum have these proxy contracts where single organizations can just totally change the dApp like whenever they want. And you have Solana being thoroughly centralized. That things have become so thoroughly centralized that by saying we're a DAO, you can now distinguish yourself, when really it should have always been about decentralized organizations. And it's like, I think it's just another way of saying what the right way to use blockchain technology is. But that's my opinion on DAOs. I think as far as what we're doing, I've talked about it a bit. You can learn more at koinos.io. That's coin with a K, .com. And yeah, it's a feeless blockchain that's infinitely upgradable, and has a bunch of other awesome stuff. But if you want to learn more, you can just Google it, or go to the site. I'd love to open it up to questions. Does anybody have questions? Okay, over there. You can come up. We make you do work.
It's specifically on Koinos too.
Oh, okay, here, I'll hand you that.
And maybe it could be answered by just better.
And are you next? And did somebody else raise their hand? Anyone else? All right, cool.
Well, just,
All right,
just
yeah.
tell me where to take this after. But all right, well, thanks for doing this. It's been really cool to hear you guys talk about everything. Specifically on Koinos, and maybe I just need to do my homework more. But on, but specifically on mana, I understand the concept of it regenerating and how you use that, and that's in lieu of fees. And I think that's a really interesting concept. But does that not still run into the same issue eventually, where if I have a fixed quantity of mana, sure, it doesn't cost me anything, but I run out of it eventually. Therefore, that's my limit on my utilization of it. Is I'm out of mana and I have to kind of wait for it or go and buy more. Does that not become the same sort of thing as like a fee that restricts usage or limits usage?
Well, when you put it that way, it sounds worse. Okay. Yeah. So is yeah. So his question was, if my mana. So, just to recap, right? What makes Koinos different than other blockchains is that simply by holding the token, you're permitted to use the blockchain. You don't have to pay fees when you use the blockchain. And the way that we accomplish this is that the blockchain imagines that the token contains mana, and that mana is what is used to pay the fees, and it gets consumed down as you use the network. And as it gets consumed down, your tokens get locked for a period of time. And his point is, well, at some point my mana will run out and I won't be able to perform more stuff, and I can't use the blockchain anymore. And I either have to wait for it to regenerate or I have to buy more coin. And yes, that is exactly how it works. And then he said, well, isn't that just as bad as a fee? And I would say, if you feel, or is that no different than a fee? And my answer is, well, in my opinion, it's very different than a fee, because with a fee, you never get the money back. You don't have the choice to just wait or to modulate your usage. And so it's different from a fee in that manner. If the if that user experience isn't more appealing to you than spending money that you never get back for the entire lifespan of using a blockchain, then I would say there are lots of great blockchain options for you, like Ethereum, like all of the Ethereum killers. But we actually think that user experience that you described is a fantastic user experience and is fundamentally different. And actually, that is critical. I think what you touched on is actually critical to blockchain sustainability and maintaining a consistent and pleasurable user experience, because what I think people will see happening, what I hope people will see happening, and what I think it's our responsibility as the developers to ensure is that you will find yourself simply regulating your own usage so that you're never really running out. You're always able to perform all the transactions that you want. And when you want to move out of the system, that you are able to do that, or you're at least able to modulate your usage, wean off your usage, so that if you want to liquidate entirely, you're able to do that. And I think that's really what the mana system is. I think the underlying point that you're getting at is that, truthfully, there is a fee. You can't get rid of the fee. You obscure the fee. We obscure the fee in opportunity cost to create a better user experience and to promote a healthier network. And that ultimately leads to a more pleasurable user experience, a faster growing network, and a network that is improving more rapidly over time.
I think an idea that just came to me is that because the mana can be delegated, do you see like maybe like mana pools where people can go and kind of like borrow mana and like give back mana, so then you get like a more fluid experience? So if you do run out of mana, you don't really run out of mana.
That's a great point, and maybe a better answer to his question, because There's actually almost kind of two kinds of mana delegation on Koinos, and one of them, I actually think it may wind up being the case that as the user, you don't necessarily even need to hold the coin, and it's never really your mana that's getting consumed. There's a feature called receiver pays. And this is something that can be implemented on any general purpose blockchain. But on Koinos, since the fees are in mana, a developer can make their dApp, can design their dApp so that they pay the mana. And so as long as you're using the app, they just pay the mana. So you as the user, you never hit that limit. You never run out of mana because they've got a well of mana that they're using to pay all the mana costs of their users. And then it's on them to optimize their app, make sure that they're using the blockchain just for the right things. Because honestly, in most applications, the blockchain component should be very small and relatively infrequent. It's only for value transfer. If you've got some trading card game, like 99.99% of that trading card game is going to live on some private server somewhere. It has nothing to do with the blockchain. It's when the one user is trying to trade some super rare card with another user that's worth $100 and they really want the guarantees of a blockchain that you're going to bring the card in there. And that's the moment when you want to bring the blockchain component into the game. And the developer wants to facilitate that exchange because they're the one generating the NFTs and capturing value from the initial sale. And so they just go, yeah, I'll eat that mana cost all day because I'm making bank when I create these NFTs out of thin air and I sell them. Next question.
Hey, Andrew. Pleasure meeting you. Firstly, I want to say that, Koinos, I think, is one of the most, understated and impactful projects in the space, being that it's under 100 mil market cap right now. And to compete at scale, definitely needs to be over 60 bill, somewhere there about microservice, modular scalability, everything's super dope. The questions that I have, do you have any upcoming plans to list on a major exchange? One, also, when is the launch of the mainnet? And will there be a transition from Koinos, the Koinos token being an ERC20 token on Ethereum? Will it then be on the mainnet? And what would that transition look like?
Yeah, so if you go to koinos.io and you join our Telegram group and your Discord group and you look at our FAQs, you can find all of the information about our future plans that we've publicly announced. I won't be announcing any future releases or announcements that we haven't already made here. Sorry. So when the mainnet launches, we will be doing a snapshot of the Ethereum balances. So if you acquire coin and you hold that coin on Ethereum, when the mainnet does occur, the snapshot will basically create a mirror of those tokens on Koinos. Were there any questions there that I can answer? Yeah, I can't. I mean, yeah, we're launching the mainnet sometime next year. We're pursuing partnerships with all of the types of organizations that you would expect, but we have nothing public to disclose on that now. Sorry. I'm joining, by the way. Oh, hey. Oh, I'm real glad I didn't answer any of those questions.
Hey, Andrew. My question is a little bit higher level about decentralization versus centralization. Huge amount of talk in the blockchain community about decentralization and intense focus on it. And I'm curious to ask kind of the reverse question that is often asked. What types of problems is decentralization not a good solution for? And how do you think about centralization versus decentralization in an effort to maybe better identify use cases where decentralization is the answer?
Decentralization is my hammer, though, or nail, whatever the metaphor is. You could hear that. Everyone could hear that, right? That's a great question. I mean, I think the short answer on what is decentralization not good for is, well, first of all, it's highly inefficient. I mean, well, the first answer to the question would be decentralization is a very mushy concept. And I think it is important to note that it is not always perfectly clear what we mean by it. There's no uniform agreed upon definition of it. I tend to think of decentralization more as a process than a binary, where we recognize that there is excessive centralization in some area that is leading to large inefficiencies. I mean, to be simplistic about it, I mean, we could say inequalities, but fundamentally there's some inefficiency there that is leading to the inequality. So, we've got excessive centralization in some domain, right? So we might, if we shift focus to the educational sector, right, we'll see, universities and administrators within those universities having excessive control over the higher education system in the United States. Okay, we see the excessive centralization, we see the inefficiency and the large costs. Decentralization is now a concept that we can use to start attacking that centralization, distributing the power, and trying to dissipate that intermediary. And blockchain, and see, this is why we think that blockchain is so important. And you often see now we're seeing another resurgence in non-blockchain based solutions to decentralized solutions, decentralized problems, let's say. People saying, DAGs, you've got feeless DAGs. Our position is that blockchain is the best technology for decentralizing a thing. You've assessed some problem, you want to decentralize it, think about how you can integrate blockchain technology, and you're well on your way to decentralizing that problem and implementing a solution. To answer another part of your question, what we're seeing, and I can't really remember if it was necessarily clear all along, but what it's really great for is value transfer, obviously, right? Because it's inefficient, that means it's expensive. And per the first questioner's point, right, even if you remove fees, doesn't mean there's no cost to the individual, right? What makes Coino special is that we have a very innovative solution that makes the cost an opportunity cost, not a monetary cost in the form of a fee. But there's still a cost. And because it's decentralized, that cost is going to be high relative to a centralized solution. And so what are the highest value use cases for a decentralized solution? There are always going to be these value transfer things. That's why NFTs are so valuable. That's why market makers are so valuable or so useful, and fungible tokens, because they are the value transfer component of an application. And so really, and I think you see this a lot if you look through our stack and you look through the nature of our solutions, what you see is it's all about making it as easy as possible to integrate. And actually, this is something that makes us a bit different than most other projects I'm familiar with. Like, for a long time, all blockchains were taking the approach, you should put your whole app on us. You developer, put your whole app on us and you never have to worry about it. And we saw that it's unsustainable. If all developers put all of their shit on your blockchain gets really bloated and expensive really fast, and it doesn't work well for anyone. Second, developers didn't want to use it like that anyway. They just wanted to tap into your app. But since you designed it that way, it was super hard for them to use it the way that they wanted to use it. And so that's the actual reason behind the universal language support, and why we dedicated so many resources to that, is because it's really just about making it super easy for developers. Oh, and the microservice architecture, to go back to his question, the microservice architecture is really just about making it super easy for developers to tap into the blockchain when they need it for the value transfer elements of their application, and not use the blockchain when they don't need it, but they don't have to totally contort their stack around this totally novel and esoteric architecture. Yeah, hope that answers. Yeah.
I think I didn't really hear the question so much, but I think you asked, when is it good to have centralization and not decentralization? I think centralization is good when you need to move fast and make decisions very quickly. So any organization that needs, or any solution that needs that, doesn't need to be decentralized, and it does need to be centralized. But I think any centralized organization can benefit from a decentralized component at some part of their business model or stack.
That was a great answer, and it actually reminded me of something that I think is interesting on this that might be helpful. And so, for example, on Koinos, we have upgradable smart contracts. And that's actually key to how we achieve our upgradability at the system level. But at the user, at the application level, right, we have, what does it mean to have upgradable smart contracts? Well, technically, and certainly at start, when you create a smart contract on Koinos, it's a centralized smart contract. You've put code on a public ledger, on a blockchain that's fully auditable, where everybody's going to see whatever you do to that code. It's being executed by a decentralized network, but you can change it whenever you want. And so we see, the world we see is not a world where it's like purely decentralized or purely centralized, but it's nested, where you have layers of decentralization and then centralization for the rapid decision making, because your users are going to want you to be able to upgrade your smart contract as rapidly as possible to make your app better. But just because they want just because they trust you to update your smart contract doesn't mean they trust every developer to upgrade every smart contract or upgrade the system itself. And then over time, you might be able to say, well, hey, we control the upgrading of this smart contract, but there are all these other stakeholders in this smart contract who should have power over the upgradability of this smart contract. And so we want to decentralize the upgradability of this smart contract now, because we're mature enough, we're ready for that. But now maybe there's another app on top of because smart contracts can call other smart contracts. So maybe another developer has come along, built a smart contract that builds on your smart contract that was centralized but is now decentralized, and their smart contract's centralized, but it's connecting to your decentralized smart contract, which is connecting to our system. So anyway, it's a hierarchy of decentralized and centralized layers. All right.
Thank you. My question is more so about the crypto market in general. What is the worst case scenario? I know it's kind of a depressing question to end on, but is it some kind of government regulation, a major hack, or even a natural disaster? What's your opinion on that?
Well, I think the thing that scares me the most, and has always scared me the most, is that the firm belief, not to sound like a broken record, that as long as blockchains were fee-based. The vast that it would not be possible to build usable applications. And so if there are no usable applications, the value of the assets could only be speculative. And if all of the value in the assets is speculative, then the worst case scenario is always very clear. It's a single number, 0. It can all go to 0. If the assets are purely speculative, then they could all crash, it could all disappear forever. And I think that would be the worst case scenario. Peer-to-peer technologies, which often a lot of people don't realize that every single blockchain network, every crypto is a P2P network. Just like Napster was, LimeWire, all these, it's all about peer-to-peer, or as we like to say, person-to-person. P2P networks, and those are really hard to kill, and they're really hard to regulate, right? So what's actually happened is that the P2P networks that came and were highly disruptive to the major industries, they were never killed. They were ultimately competed away by the likes of Apple, Facebook, YouTube, now the biggest corporations in the world. And so, yes, government regulation is going to be an ongoing thing. I don't view it as an existential threat to the space. Individual projects, certainly, because so many projects are scams, gray scams, or just violated regulations and laws. And so those are going to be the most vulnerable. But I think at this point, but I think anytime, our company has gone to great lengths to be above board and beyond repute all through every stage. So that if any regulator or law firm ever approached us, we'd be able to open up all of our books, show them every action that we've taken, and unless they want to violate the Constitution or their own laws, they wouldn't be able to do anything to us. We're a company that obeys all the laws, right? So what do we have to be afraid of?
And I think that's where the space is moving. More companies are trying to do that. Like we had the guy from Celsius here a few weeks ago, and he said, yes, we want to talk to the regulators, bring them on. I don't think regulation is a threat to the space. It might be a threat in the short term, but in long term, I think eventually policymakers will realize that this is a technology that can be beneficial as opposed to being not beneficial. And I think the regulation will be made in order to not mitigate these technologies, but actually adopt them and encourage innovation in the space. But and I think what Andrew said is exactly the biggest threat we have is that people are just gonna like walk away from this and say, I don't want any to use this. I don't see that happening, but I think that's it.
The last thing I want to say about this is that unless the Fed is going to offer interest rates above 5%, they're not going to be able to do anything against crypto because there will be a freaking revolution among people who are looking for yield, and the Fed can't raise interest rates. So the problem is that half the government is tied against the other. As long as interest rates are this low, which they will, they're not going to be able to suppress the popular desire to speculate on potentially valuable products. If they try to crack down on crypto harder than they're cracking down on, gambling apps, they're going to have a revolt on their hands because at least here you're investing, arguably. Are we done?
I think so.
Oh, that's sad.
One more question. Oh, the very last question, huh?
I tried to you all's attention. No one wants to look at the women to ask questions. I'm joking. I'm just poking at you. Hello, everyone. I'm SX Noir. I work on the intersection of sex and tech, and I will be hosting a amazing event on sex tech, crypto, NFTs next month. So come up and ask me about it. So my question is, I really loved everything you shared around your concepts around decentralization and truly listening to the originators of this technology and what they wanted, and how so many people are using all this like hip language and it kind of is all saying the same thing. And so I talk a lot about like the empathy, like where's the empathy in crypto, and I see that like even in these meetups, like the people I talk to tend to be very empathetic, loving, caring, humanitarians almost, people who have a very worldwide concept of, humanity. And so my question is, what happens when everything goes to shit? Like, there's going to be a combination between centralized and decentralized institutions, of course. It can't all be decentralized. Like, someone was like, why is Art Basel not decentralized? I'm like, babe, we're about 10 years out or 20 years out from that happening. But my question is, how do we support each other from a business perspective, like our cohorts, and also just from a social perspective when everything is going to crumble? Like, things are going to have to break to be rebuilt. And the internet that we know today is rife with exploitation, anxiety. Like, this generation is the most anxious generation in the entire world. The most anxious generation, depressed, there's child abuse material all over the internet now. And so how are we creating a new internet, or are we just replicating what we already see with 3D renderings and AR, So I'd be interested to see, how you feel about this from an empathetic, emotional perspective versus a business perspective.
Thank you.
Was that Sex Tech Noir? What was the SX Noir? Awesome. Your job is, I never thought I'd hear a job that's better than mine. But there it is. SX Noir. And something, thank you, fantastic question. And it also brought to mind, going back to that question, centralization, decentralization. And, you said it's going to be a mix. And, I think, at the end of the day, we're just groups of people trying to solve some kind of problem. And maybe it's even the case that this centralized, decentralized dichotomy isn't the right way to be thinking about it. We think about decentralization a lot because we think that basically the substrate, the bottom, needs to be maximally decentralized so that on top of it, people can build this infinite variety of options. But at the end of the day, what's on top of that substrate is organizations of people. It might be one person, it might be 20 people, and we want to create as much freedom among those people as possible. I don't know if that's actually helpful, but I think I see the tools that we're building as trying to make that happen. To your question, the empathy. I hope that at the end of the day, we are solving those problems. I think 10 years ago, 20 years ago, when I was looking at the world, and when we talk about centralization, what we are seeing is people's day-to-day lives being controlled by people they don't know and they don't see, right? Maybe this is what we're really dancing around, is that we would prefer to operate in the world influenced by people of our choice, people who are around us, people that we choose to be around, people that we know, and that to the greatest degree possible, people outside of our knowledge, of our sphere of, our sphere of choice, are having as little control as possible over us. And that will lead to a more, right, what is the cause, what enables people to to act in the world without empathy is creating layers of distance between one another. And once you're distant from another, you can hurt them, you can deprive them of things, you can treat them as if they're inhuman. And so if you take away that power, if you disconnect that influence, if you allow people to work together with one another to produce value and cut out anyone, when we talk about intermediaries, when we talk about centralization, we're talking about people who are injecting themselves into our lives and taking wealth and overcharging and not giving us choice. And we're trying to cut them out and acting without empathy. Because people, the vast majority of people have empathy, have consciences. And it's just that we have these systems in place that suppress those and interfere with them. And so it's such a great question because it makes me go back to why I started down this journey in the first place. Which is very important. And I think that taps into one of the points you highlighted. I think there is a risk that you spend so much time and energy focusing on the technical solutions that you forget the problem you were trying to solve in the first place. And I think that that's a criticism that we've levied at our competitors internally a lot, and why we feel they've lost the thread in the way that they pursue their solutions. But I think it is insanely important that we levy that criticism at ourselves as regularly as possible. So, thanks again. If everything goes to shit, real decentralization means that if everything goes to shit, the system gets stronger. Boom.
I agree. All right, we're going to wrap it up. This has been a long time. Thank you so much, Andrew. We appreciate it.
Thank you all. Thank you.
Thank you guys for coming and supporting us. See you next week.